The chalk dust hadn't settled from Eleanor Whitfield's last arithmetic lesson when the sound of galloping horses shattered the afternoon peace of Dry Creek. She looked up from organizing her desk, watching through the schoolhouse window as four riders thundered down Main Street like harbingers of doom. "Miss Whitfield?" Little Mary Patterson tugged at her sleeve. "Can I still bring my reader home?" Eleanor forced a smile, though unease prickled at her spine. "Of course, dear. Just be careful with it." She helped the girl pack her primer, all while keeping one eye on the window. The riders had stopped outside the bank dot as her students filed out, chattering excitedly about the disruption. Eleanor gathered her own belongings. She'd been in Dry Creek for 3 months, long enough to recognize trouble when it rode into town wearing black dusters and tied-down guns. The afternoon sun cast her shadow long and thin as she stepped onto the boardwalk. The normal bustle of Main Street had ceased. Shopkeepers peered through windows, mothers clutched their children close, and even the saloon had gone quiet. "Miss Whitfield," Sheriff Watson called from across the street. The elderly lawman looked pale, his hand trembling. "Near his gun. Might be best if you headed home." But before Eleanor could respond, the bank door burst open. Samuel Hayes, the bank manager, stumbled out clutching a leather satchel to his chest. His face was white as parchment, eyes wild with fear. Behind him, moving with the lazy confidence of apex predators, came the Briggs Gang. Eleanor had seen their faces on wanted posters, but the crude drawings hadn't captured the menace that rolled off them like smoke. Tom Briggs led the pack, his blue eyes cold as a mountain winter. His brothers, Carl and Wade, flanked him like demons guarding the gates of hell. Their cousin Jesse brought up the rear, rifle cradled in his arms. "Now, Hayes," Tom Briggs's voice carried clearly in the still air. "We had us an understanding. 20% of all large deposits, just like you agreed." "I never agreed to anything." Hayes's voice cracked. "That was Weatherby's deal, not mine." Eleanor pressed herself against the milliner's shop, unable to look away. She noticed Sheriff Watson had disappeared, probably through the back door of his office. Smart man. Cowardly, but smart. "See, that's where you're wrong." Tom stepped closer to Hayes, spurs jingling with each step. "The deal was with the bank, not the man. You took Weatherby's job. You took his obligations. I won't be party to theft and extortion." The words had barely left Hayes's mouth when Tom Briggs drew his Colt in one fluid motion. The gunshot cracked like thunder. Hayes jerked backward, a red stain blooming across his white shirt. He looked down at it with an expression of genuine surprise before crumpling to the dusty street. The satchel fell open, spilling currency notes that caught in the wind like dying birds. Eleanor's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp. But the small sound was enough. Tom Briggs's head snapped toward her, their eyes meeting across 20 feet of dusty street dot. In that moment, Eleanor saw her own death written in his cold gaze. She'd witnessed a murder. In a town too frightened to stand up to the Briggs Gang, she was a liability they couldn't afford. "Well, well," Tom said softly, the pretty schoolteacher. "Afternoon, Miss Whitfield." Eleanor's voice stuck in her throat. Her limbs felt frozen, her mind screaming at her to run while her body refused to obey. "Cat got your tongue?" Wade Briggs grinned, revealing teeth stained brown from tobacco. "Or maybe you didn't see nothing. That'd be the smart play." Billcoats. Eleanor swallowed hard. "I was just leaving. Were you now?" Tom took a step toward her. "Funny thing about leaving, Miss Whitfield. Sometimes folks leave and they keep talking. We can't have that." Carl Briggs laughed an ugly sound. "What do you want to do with her, Tom?" "Same thing we do with all witnesses." Tom's hand moved back to his gun. "Sorry, schoolmarm. Nothing personal. Just business. The spell broke." Eleanor spun and ran, her boots slipping on the boardwalk. Behind her, she heard Tom's voice, calm as if ordering dinner. "Jessie, Carl, get her. Clean and quiet if you can manage it." Eleanor burst through the door of Morrison's General Store, sending the bell jangling wildly. Jake Morrison looked up from his ledger, startled. "Miss Whitfield." "What? Back door?" Eleanor gasped. "Please." The old shopkeeper's eyes widened as he saw the Briggs brothers through his window. Without another word, he pointed to the storeroom. Eleanor ran, knocking over a display of canned goods in her haste. The crash of tin on wood echoed behind her as she yanked open the back door. The alley stretched before her, narrow and shadowed. Eleanor hitched up her skirts and ran, her mother's voice echoing in her mind. A lady never runs, Eleanor. But her mother had never met the Briggs Gang. A bullet whined past her ear, shattering a window. Eleanor ducked instinctively, her heart hammering against her corset stays. She could hear them behind her, boots pounding, men cursing. The livery stable loomed ahead. If she could reach her horse ... But as she rounded the corner, Wade Briggs stepped out of the shadows, gun drawn. "End of the line, teacher." Eleanor skidded to a stop, trapped between Wade ahead and Carl behind. Her hand found the small derringer in her pocket, her father's parting gift. No woman should go west unarmed, he'd said. She'd thought him paranoid. Now she blessed his foresight. "Come along quiet-like," Carl said, approaching from behind. "Tom don't like to be kept waiting." "Please," Eleanor said, hating how her voice shook. "I have students, children who depend on me. Should have thought of that before you witnessed a killing." Wade moved closer. Eleanor drew the derringer and fired in one motion. The small gun made a pathetic pop, but Wade howled and grabbed his shoulder where her bullet had grazed him. She darted past him, running for the church. Sanctuary. If she could claim sanctuary ... She burst through the heavy doors of the Methodist church. Reverend Mills stood at the pulpit, his evening congregation turning in their pews. "Sanctuary," Eleanor gasped. "In God's name, I claimed sanctuary." The Reverend's face went white as Tom Briggs filled the doorway, his brothers behind him. "Evening, Reverend," Tom said pleasantly. "Sorry to interrupt. We're just here for Miss Whitfield." "This is God's house," Reverend Mills said, though his voice trembled. "Violence has no place here." "Then send her out, and there won't be any violence." Tom's smile was cold as a grave. "Inside a church, anyway." Eleanor stood in the aisle, acutely, aware of every eye upon her. She saw fear in their faces, saw them calculating whether one woman's life was worth risking their own. She couldn't blame them. In a lawless Arizona territory, the Briggs Gang was judge, jury, and executioner Mrs. Henderson, whose son Eleanor taught wouldn't meet her eyes. Mr. Clayton, who tipped his hat to her just this morning, studied his hymnal as if it contained the secrets of the universe. "I'll come," Eleanor said quietly. "Better to die with dignity than cower behind others. Just ... don't hurt anyone else." "Smart woman." Tom gestured with his gun. "Outside?" Eleanor walked down the aisle, her footsteps echoing in the silence. As she passed Reverend Mills, he whispered, "God go with you, child." The setting sun painted the sky crimson as she stepped outside. How appropriate, she thought. A blood-red sunset for a bloody end. The Briggs Gang surrounded her, herding her away from the church toward the edge of town. Eleanor held her head. High, though, her legs felt like water. "Nothing personal, you understand," Tom said conversationally as they reached a cluster of cottonwoods. "But I've got a reputation to maintain. Can't have witnesses talking to marshals or judges." "Then you'd better do it quick," Eleanor said, finding courage she didn't know she possessed. "Because if I get even half a chance, I'll see you hang for murdering Samuel Hayes." Tom laughed. I do admire spirit in a woman. Shame to waste it. He drew his gun. Any last words? Eleanor thought of her students, of the poems she'd never teach them, of the letters she'd never write home. She thought of her mother's rose garden in Boston, of Sunday dinners and civilized conversation. All of it seemed like another lifetime. Lord, have mercy on my soul, she whispered, closing her eyes. The gunshot split the air like Judgment Day. Death. Eleanor discovered, felt surprisingly like life. Her eyes flew open. Tom Briggs was cursing, his gun spinning away into the dust, blood dripping from his hand. A second shot rang out, dirt exploding at Carl's feet. That's far enough, Briggs. The voice came from the shadows beneath the cottonwoods, deep, gravelly, with an undertone that promised violence. A figure emerged, moving with the fluid grace of a natural predator. Black clothes, black hat, silver concos glinting on his vest like stars in a night sky. Eleanor's first thought was that the angel of death had taken form as a gunslinger. The stranger was tall, whipcord lean, with a face that might have been handsome, if not for the vicious scar running from left temple to jaw. But it was his eyes that held her, gray as storm clouds, cold as winter steel, yet with something else lurking in their depths. Pain, perhaps, or purpose. Jack Dalton. Tom Briggs spat the name like profanity. Should have known you'd crawl out of whatever hole you've been hiding in. Been keeping busy, Tom. The stranger, Dalton, kept his Colt trained on the gang leader with rock-steady aim. Heard you were painting the town red. Figured it was time for that conversation we've been postponing. This ain't your business, Dalton. The woman saw something she shouldn't have. Funny thing about murder, Tom. It tends to be everybody's business. Dalton's voice remained conversational, but Eleanor noticed how his gun never wavered. Why don't you boys mount up and ride on? Find some other town to terrorize. Jesse Briggs shifted his rifle. There's 4 of us and 1 of you, Dalton. That earned a smile that made Eleanor shiver. Your point? My point is, Wade went for his gun with his good hand. Dalton's Colt spoke 3 times in rapid succession. Wade's gun flew from his grip. Carl's hat spun off his head. Jesse's saddle horn exploded in a shower of leather, his horse rearing in panic. Next ones won't be warnings, Dalton said mildly, smoke curling from his gun barrel. Now, I believe I suggested you gentlemen move along. Tom's face had darkened to the color of old blood. This isn't over, Dalton. You just signed your death. Warrant, yours and hers. Wouldn't be the first time. Dalton stepped aside, clearing their path. Evening, Tom. Boys. The Briggs Gang mounted their horses, Tom pausing to look back. His eyes found Eleanor. See you real soon, schoolmarm. Count. On it? They thundered off into the gathering darkness, leaving dust and promises of vengeance in their wake. Eleanor's knees chose that moment to give out. She sank to the ground, her dress pooling around her like spilled ink. The shake started then, her whole body trembling as the reality of her near death crashed over her. Ma'am? Dalton holstered his gun and crouched nearby, careful to keep a respectful distance. You hurt? She shook her head, not trusting her voice. Up close, she could see the hard years written on him, lines etched by sun and wind, the watchful tension of a man who'd lived by the gun. His clothes were well maintained, but showed wear. Everything about him spoke of violence, yet his voice, when he addressed her, held unexpected gentleness. They'll be back, she finally managed. Tom Briggs doesn't make idle threats. No, he doesn't. Dalton stood, offering his hand. After a moment's hesitation, she took it. His palm was calloused, but his grip careful, as if he was afraid she might break. You have somewhere safe to go? Family in town? I board with Mrs. Patterson, but I can't bring danger to her door. Smart thinking. Those storm-gray eyes studied her. There's an old mission about 5 miles north. Santa Clara. Abandoned for years, but the walls are solid adobe. Defensible. Until when? Until they get tired of looking? Eleanor heard her voice rising. Mr. Dalton, I just witnessed Tom Briggs commit murder in broad daylight. They won't stop until I'm dead. He was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. Around them, Dry Creek was coming cautiously back to life. Eleanor saw faces. In windows, heard whispered conversations. She wondered how many of them were glad she'd survived, and how many wished the Briggs Gang had finished their bloody work. You're right, Dalton said finally. Tom won't stop, which means we need to stop him first. We? Eleanor stared at him. Mr. Dalton, I appreciate your intervention, but why would you risk your life for a stranger? Something shifted in his expression, a crack in his armor revealing old pain. Let's just say Tom Briggs and I have unfinished business. Keeping you alive might be the way to settle it. That's not an answer. It's all the answer you're getting for now. He touched the brim of his hat. You have a horse? At the livery. Get it. Pack light, water, food, ammunition if you have any. Meet me at the north edge of town in 20 minutes. Eleanor stood, brushing dust from her skirts. Mr. Dalton, I don't even know you. For all I know, you're worse than the Briggs Gang. That earned her a genuine smile, transforming his scarred face. Ma'am, if I wanted you dead, we wouldn't be having this conversation. 20 minutes. He walked away, spurs singing a metallic song. Eleanor watched him go, this dangerous stranger who'd materialized from nowhere to save her life. Every instinct she'd developed in civilized Boston screamed that she shouldn't trust him. But what choice did she have? Mrs. Patterson was nearly hysterical when Eleanor returned to collect her things. That man, the elderly widow whispered as Eleanor saddled her mare. Jack Dalton. I've heard stories, child. They say he used to ride with the Briggs Gang. They say he's killed more men than smallpox. And yet he saved my life, Eleanor pointed. Out, checking her father's Derringer and the old Henry rifle she'd purchased but never used. For his own reasons, mark my words. Mrs. Patterson pressed a cloth bundle into Eleanor's hands. Food for the road. Men like that don't do nothing for free. Eleanor thought of the pain she'd glimpsed in Dalton's eyes. Perhaps. Or perhaps even men like that have their reasons. 20 minutes later, she guided her mare to the north edge of town. Dalton waited. In the shadows, nearly invisible until he moved. His horse was a magnificent black stallion that looked like it could run to hell and back. Good, he said simply. You can ride? Well enough. It'll have to do. We'll push hard for the first hour, put distance between us and town. He studied the horizon. Tom will need time to regroup, gather more men, but he'll come. They rode. In silence, the desert transforming around them as night fell like a heavy curtain. The temperature plummeted, and Eleanor pulled her shawl tighter. Above them, stars emerged like scattered diamonds, and a crescent moon provided just enough light. To follow the trail. Why Santa Clara? Eleanor asked eventually. Defensible position, good sidelines, water from an old well. He glanced at her. Plus, Tom knows I know about it. He'll expect me to take you somewhere else. But won't he figure it out? Counting. On it. Eleanor felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. You're using me as bait. I'm keeping you alive, he corrected. If Tom wants to walk into a trap in the process, that's his choice. What happened between you two? Why does he hate you so much? Dalton was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he spoke, his voice came from far away, from some distant, painful past. We rode together once, 5, 6 years. Did things I'm not proud of? Robbery, rustling, worse. He paused. Then Tom crossed a line even I wouldn't cross. What line? His jaw tightened. He killed an innocent, a woman who was just trying to help people. My sister. Eleanor's breath caught. I'm so sorry. Sarah was 19. Came west to work as a nurse, tending minors and their families. I thought I could protect her by being part of the gang. Keep them away from her. His laugh was bitter. Tom took that as a challenge. When she refused his advances, H. He made an example of her. My God. I killed 2 of his men that night. Would have killed Tom too, but he ran. Been hunting him ever since. He looked at her then, and Eleanor saw why he'd saved her. In his eyes, she wasn't Eleanor Whitfield. She was Sarah Dalton, and this time he wouldn't fail. I'm not her, Eleanor said softly. You know that, don't you? Saving me won't bring her back. I know. His voice was rough. But maybe it'll let her rest easier. They rode on through the night, and Eleanor found herself studying her protector. Who was Jack Dalton, really? Outlaw? Turned avenging angel? A man consumed by guilt and grief? Or simply someone trying to balance the scales of justice in the only way the frontier understood? The mission appeared out of the darkness like a pale ghost. Adobe walls rose against the stars, the bell tower reaching skyward despite its partially collapsed roof. It looked lonely, forgotten, a monument to failed dreams. Home sweet home, Dalton said dryly as they rode through the crumbling gate. Eleanor felt she'd crossed more than just miles of desert. She'd left behind the safe, predictable world she'd known and entered something older, wilder, where men like Jack Dalton made their own law, and women like her either adapted or died. Mr. Dalton, she said as they dismounted. What happens when they come? He looked at her, those gray eyes unreadable in the moonlight. We make our stand, together. I'm a schoolteacher. I've never killed anyone. With luck, you won't have to. He began unsaddling his horse, but luck's been in short supply lately. Eleanor thought of Tom Briggs's cold eyes, of the promise of death she'd seen there. Then you'd better teach me more than arithmetic, Mr. Dalton. He smiled then, that rare expression that transformed him. Yes, ma'am. I believe I'd better. The mission of Santa Clara had been built with faith and hope, but now it would serve as a fortress. As dawn painted the eastern sky pink and gold, Eleanor watched Jack Dalton transform from mysterious savior to tactical genius. He walked the perimeter like a general surveying a battlefield, noting every strength and weakness. The adobe walls were thick enough to stop bullets. The bell tower, despite its damaged state, offered commanding views. The old well still held water, brackish but drinkable. Here, he said, positioning Eleanor at a window overlooking the main approach. Anyone coming from town will have to cross that open ground. You'll see them long before they reach the walls. Eleanor hefted the Henry rifle, its weight still unfamiliar. I've only shot at targets, bottles and cans. Men aren't much different, Dalton said. They just shoot back. He spent the morning drilling her on the rifle, how to lead a moving target, how to reload quickly under pressure, how to use cover effectively. His teaching was patient but uncompromising, correcting her stance, her breathing, her tendency to close her eyes when she pulled the trigger. You're thinking too much, he said after she missed her 5th shot at a makeshift target. Stop aiming with your mind. Trust your instincts. My instincts are telling me to run back to Boston, Eleanor muttered. Boston won't help you now. His voice gentled. This is your world now, Eleanor. The sooner you accept that, the better your chances. She tried again, forcing herself to relax, to stop overthinking. The rifle bucked against her shoulder, and the target, an old pot, exploded in a shower of clay. Better. Was that approval in his voice? Again. As the sun climbed higher, turning the desert into a furnace, they took shelter in the mission's shadowed interior. Eleanor discovered a room that had once been the priest's quarters, religious texts still moldering on shelves. "Did you ever believe?" she asked Dalton, who was cleaning his guns with methodical precision. "In God, I mean?" He paused in his work. "Used to. Before Sarah died. And now? Now I believe in being faster than the other man." He spun the cylinder of his Colt, checking. Each chamber. God helps those who help themselves, and all that. Eleanor picked up a crumbling Bible, its pages brittle with age. "I used to teach Sunday school back in Boston. The children loved the story of David and Goliath. Boy with a sling kills a giant." Dalton said, "Not a bad lesson for today. Is that what we are? David against Goliath? Maybe. Except our Goliath is bringing friends." He holstered his gun and looked at her. "Eleanor, I need you to understand something. When they come, and they will come, it won't be like the stories. It'll be brutal and fast and terrifying. You'll want to run or hide or beg for mercy. Don't. Why not? Because Tom Briggs doesn't understand mercy. Show weakness, and he'll torture you before he kills you. Make him work for it, and at least you'll die on your feet." Eleanor felt a chill despite the heat. "You certainly know how to inspire confidence, Mr. Dalton." "Jack," he said, "if we're going to die together, might as well use first names." "We're not going to die," Eleanor said firmly. "I have 22 students expecting me on Monday morning. I won't disappoint them." Jack smiled. "Now that's the spirit I want to see." They spent the afternoon preparing. Jack showed her how to barricade doorways, how to create fallback positions, how to conserve ammunition. Eleanor found herself absorbing the lessons with surprising ease. Perhaps the frontier was already changing her, stripping away the veneer of civilization to reveal something harder underneath Dot as evening approached. They sat in the courtyard, sharing the food Mrs. Patterson had packed. The simple meal of biscuits and dried beef felt like a feast. "Tell me about Boston," Jack said unexpectedly. Eleanor blinked at him. "Why? Might be our last night alive. Seems a shame to spend it in silence." So she told him about cobblestone streets and gas lamps, about her father's bookshop and her mother's. Garden parties. She described autumn in New England, the leaves turning fire-bright, a crisp air carrying hints of wood smoke and apple cider. "Why did you leave?" Jack asked. "Sounds like paradise compared to this." Eleanor considered her answer. "Because it was too safe, too predictable. Every day the same as the last, my whole life mapped out before me. Marriage to some banker's son. Children, tea parties, and charity work. I wanted—" She paused, searching for words. "I wanted to matter, to make a difference. And now?" She laughed, surprising herself. "Now I'm hiding in a ruined mission with a reformed outlaw, waiting for a gang of killers to find us. I'd say I got my wish for adventure." "Careful what you wish for," Jack said, but he was smiling. As darkness fell, they took their positions. Jack had explained that Tom would likely attack at dawn, the traditional time for such things. But they couldn't afford to be careless. Eleanor dozed fitfully, jerking awake at every sound. The desert came alive at night. Coyotes howling, owls hunting, small creatures scurrying through the ruins. Each noise made her heart race. "Easy," Jack's voice came from the darkness. "You'll know when they're coming." "How?" "Everything else will go quiet." Hours crawled by. Eleanor thought about her students, wondering what they'd think when she didn't appear for class. Would they believe she'd abandoned them? The thought hurt worse than her fear. "Jack?" she whispered. "Yeah? If something happens to me, will you? Get word to my students. Tell them I didn't want to leave. Nothing's going to happen to you. Promise me." She heard him sigh. "I promise. But you're going to tell them yourself." The first pale hint of dawn was touching the sky when the desert fell silent. No coyotes, no owls, Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. "They're here," Jack said quietly. Eleanor gripped her rifle, peering through the window. At first, she saw nothing. Then shadows moved against shadows, and riders materialized from the gloom. She counted 7. Tom had indeed brought reinforcements. "Steady," Jack murmured. "Let them come closer. Make your shots count." The riders spread out, approaching from multiple angles. Eleanor recognized Tom Briggs in the lead, his black coat distinctive even in the poor light. Her hands were steady. On the rifle, her breathing calm. The Boston schoolteacher was gone. In her place stood someone harder, someone who understood that mercy was a luxury she couldn't afford. Jack Dalton. Tom's voice carried clearly. "We know you're in there. Send out the woman and ride away. This doesn't have to be your fight." "Morning, Tom," Jack called back cheerfully. "Nice of you to bring friends. I was worried things might get boring." "Last chance, Jack. That school norm means nothing to you." "Maybe not. But you killed my sister, Tom. Figured it's time to settle that debt." Silence stretched taut. Eleanor sighted down her rifle barrel, picking her target. One of the riders was edging closer to her position, trying to get an angle on the window. "Have it your way," Tom shouted. The attack came like thunder. The first. Shots shattered the dawn quiet, muzzle flashes lighting up the desert like deadly fireflies. Eleanor's window exploded in a shower of glass and adobe dust. She dropped down, heart hammering, as bullets whined overhead. "Return fire," Jack shouted. "Keep them back." Eleanor rose, sighted, and squeezed the trigger. The Henry bucked against her shoulder. Her target jerked in his saddle but didn't fall. She worked the lever, fired again. This time the rider tumbled from his horse. First blood. Eleanor waited for the horror, the guilt, but felt only grim satisfaction. That man would have killed her without hesitation. Jack's guns roared from his position near the gate. She caught glimpses of him moving, never staying still, making every shot count. 2 more attackers fell under his precise fire. The tower. Someone shouted. Eleanor looked up to see Wade Briggs climbing through a gap in the bell tower, rifle in hand. From there, he'd have a clear shot at Jack's position. Without thinking, she swung her rifle up and fired. Wade jerked, lost his grip, and fell 20 feet to crash through rotted timbers. He didn't move again. "Nice shot," Jack called, but there was no time for acknowledgement. Carl Briggs and another man were rushing her window. She fired rapidly, driving them back, but her ammunition was running low. A figure appeared in her peripheral vision, Jesse Briggs, coming through a breach. In the wall she hadn't noticed. Eleanor spun, but he was already too close. His rifle swung toward her. The derringer appeared in her hand as if by magic. The small gun barked once, and Jesse clutched his throat, blood spurting between his fingers. He dropped to his knees, eyes wide with surprise, then pitched forward. Eleanor stared at the body, at the spreading pool of blood. She'd just killed a man at close range, seen the life leave his eyes. Her hands began to shake. "Eleanor, the courtyard!" Jack's urgent voice snapped her back. She grabbed the Henry and ran, reaching the fountain just as Tom Briggs and his remaining men converged on their position. They were down to 4 attackers now, but they were closing in. Jack appeared beside her, reloading with practiced efficiency. "You hurt?" "No." Her voice sounded strange to her own ears. "We're winning, aren't we?" "Maybe." But Tom's still breathing. He peered around the fountain. "And he's smart. He'll try something." Fire. Eleanor smelled smoke and turned to see flames licking at the mission's wooden gates. Tom had set them ablaze, probably hoping to flush out his prey. "So much for our defensive position," she said. "Still got stone walls between us and them." Jack checked his ammunition. But we need to end this soon. Dalton. Tom's voice, closer. Now, your little schoolmarm fought well. I'm impressed. Tell you what, let's settle this like men. You and me. Winner takes all. It's a trap, Eleanor said immediately. Of course it is. Jack smiled grimly. But it might be our best chance. I drop Tom, the others might scatter. And if you don't? He pulled a spare revolver from his saddlebag. Then you finish what we started. You've proven you can do what needs doing. Before Eleanor could protest, Jack stood. All right, Tom, let's finish this. He walked into the courtyard, spurs ringing against stone. The rising sun painted everything in shades of gold and red, like a Renaissance painting of Judgment Day. Tom Briggs emerged from cover, hands hovering over his guns. They faced each other across 20 paces, two men bound by violence and vengeance. Eleanor watched from behind the fountain, spare revolver heavy in her grip. She noticed Carl Briggs moving along the wall, trying to flank Jack's position. Without hesitation, Eleanor fired. Carl yelped and dove for cover, her bullet chipping. Stone inches from his head. Just you and me, Tom, Jack said calmly. Your boys stay out of it, or the schoolmarm starts evening the odds again. Tom's face twisted with rage. Should have stayed retired. Should have let the past stay buried. Sarah deserves justice. Sarah was a whore who Jack drew. His hand blurred, the Colt appearing like magic. Tom was fast, incredibly fast, but Jack was faster. The guns roared simultaneously. Tom Briggs staggered back, looking down at the spreading red stain on his chest. His gun dropped from nerveless fingers. You ... You son of a... He fell to his knees, then forward, and moved no more. For a heartbeat. Silence descended on Santa Clara Mission. Then Carl Briggs screamed in rage and charged from cover, guns blazing. Jack spun, but Eleanor saw him stumble. Tom's bullet had found its mark, blood darkening Jack's side. Eleanor didn't remember standing, didn't remember aiming. A Henry rifle felt like an extension of her will. She fired once, twice, 3 times. Carl Briggs danced a macabre ballet as her bullets struck home and crumpled beside his brother. The last remaining outlaw looked at the carnage, at Jack still standing despite his wound, at Eleanor with her smoking rifle. He threw down his guns and ran for his horse. Let him go, Jack said when Eleanor started to aim. Someone needs to spread the word. Tom Briggs is dead. The gang is finished. Eleanor lowered the rifle and ran to Jack as he sank to one knee. Blood seeped between his fingers where he pressed against his side. How bad? She asked, helping him to sit against the fountain. Had worse. He managed a weak smile, though usually not before breakfast. Eleanor tore strips from her petticoat, packing the wound with the efficiency of someone who just discovered reserves of strength she never knew existed. The bullet had passed through cleanly, missing anything vital. You'll live, she said, though you'll have another scar to add to your collection. Worth it. Jack looked at Tom Briggs's body. 8 years I've been hunting him. 8 years of hate eating at me like acid. And now ... Now it's over. Is it? He looked at her with those storm-gray eyes. What happens when the killing's done? When the vengeance is complete? What's left? Eleanor considered the question as she finished bandaging his wound. Around them, the mission stood silent except for the crackle of dying flames. The bodies of the Briggs Gang lay where they'd fallen, testament to the violence that had erupted in this holy place. Life, she said finally. Life is what's left. The chance to be more than your past. Pretty words, schoolmarm. But men like me don't get second chances. Says who? Eleanor helped him to his feet. Dry Creek needs a sheriff. A real one, not like Watson, who runs at the first sign of trouble. Jack laughed and winced as it pulled at his wound. A former outlaw as a lawman? A man who risks his life to save others, who faces his demons and chooses justice over easy violence. She smiled. I think the good people of Dry Creek would be lucky to have you. And what about you? Back to teaching? Eleanor looked down at herself. Dress torn and bloodstained, hair wild, hands that had just dealt death without hesitation. Yes, but I think I'll be a different kind of teacher now. These children need to learn more than just reading and arithmetic. They need to learn to be strong, to stand up for what's right, even if it means violence, if necessary. She met his gaze steadily. The frontier doesn't allow for innocence, Jack. Better they learn that from someone who cares about them. They made their way slowly out of the mission, Jack leaning on Eleanor for support. His horse and her mare waited patiently despite the gunfire, well-trained to chaos. We should report this to the territorial marshal, Jack said. Your testimony will clear both of us. And after that? He was quiet for a moment, looking back at the mission where his quest for vengeance had finally ended. I've been chasing ghosts for 8 years. Maybe it's time I tried chasing something else. Like what? Peace, purpose. He glanced at her. Maybe even happiness. Eleanor felt something warm bloom in her chest. Those sound like worthy pursuits. They mounted carefully, Jack grimacing with pain. As they rode away from Santa Clara, Eleanor looked back one last time. The mission stood against the morning sky, scarred by violence, but still standing. Like her, like Jack, like everyone who survived in this harsh land. Eleanor, Jack said, as Dry Creek appeared in the distance. What you did back there, not many could have done it. You saved both our lives. I did what I had to do. She straightened in her saddle. A week ago, I begged for mercy. Today, I fought for justice. The frontier changes people. Not always for the better. No, she agreed. But we get to choose what kind of change. I choose to be strong without losing compassion, tough without becoming cruel. Jack smiled, and this time it reached his eyes. Sarah would have liked you. As they rode into Dry Creek, Eleanor saw faces appearing in windows, people emerging onto the street. Word would spread quickly. The Briggs Gang was finished. The schoolteacher had survived. The mysterious gunslinger had kept his word. There would be questions, investigations, probably a trial. But Eleanor faced it all without fear. She'd been tested in fire and emerged transformed. The naive Boston girl who'd stepped off the stage 3 months ago was gone. In her place rode a woman of the West, educated but not soft, civilized but not weak. Miss Whitfield. Her students came running, faces bright with relief and excitement. You're back. You're alive. Eleanor dismounted, wincing at her various aches and pains. Of course I'm back. We have lessons to finish, don't we? As the children surrounded her with questions and concerns, Eleanor caught Jack's eye. He nodded once, understanding passing between them. They'd faced death together, dealt death together, and emerged bonded by more than mere survival. The future stretched before them, uncertain but full of possibility. There would be other challenges, other threats. The frontier was never truly tame, but Eleanor knew now that she could face whatever came. She was no longer the woman who begged for mercy. She was Eleanor Whitfield, schoolteacher and survivor, protector and fighter. And with Jack Dalton beside her, as sheriff, as friend, as perhaps something more, she would help build something good in this wild land. The sun climbed higher, burning away the shadows of night. A new day had dawned in Dry Creek, and with it new hope that the reckoning at Santa Clara was over. The building had begun.